So in today's video, you can see I'm going to indulge in a little bit of woodland photography. However, it's going to be a little bit different today, and I'll get into that in a second, but essentially I want to talk all about composition in woodland photography. And what that means is, when I'm in a place like this, how am I finding a photograph? How am I finding a scene or a subject that's worth getting my camera out for? And probably more importantly, how am I making sense of a landscape, an area, a location that is just so cluttered, you know, with all different species of trees, twigs all over the floor, fallen trees, and then this time of year you've got all the different colours of autumn. What is it that I'm looking for? You know, what inspires me to get my camera out in the first place? And it's something that I do touch on in my woodland photography videos, but I wanted to delve into it a little bit more deeply today. So come with me. Now, before we get into any practicalities of woodland photography, I wanted to talk about this one thing that, look, if you take anything from this whole video, yeah, about woodland photography and trying to find compositions in the woodland, let it be this, please, because it's so important. This is the most significant thing I've learned. And it's all about the fact that woodland photography is difficult. All right, and what I mean by this is, like, lowering your expectations, understand and accept that it's hard. It takes time, it takes effort, patience, it takes a lot of perseverance, returning back to the same places. Let me put it to you like this, all right? If I go to the coast, to a location that I've never been before, as long as the conditions are decent, I feel fairly confident I'm going to come back with an image that's half decent. What I've learned about woodland photography is that I can come back to the same woodland, you know, several times, more than that. All right, and I might not have one photograph to show for it. But what I'm trying to say is the moment you accept that as a fact, it's so much better, because you don't expect to be coming back with photographs all the time. You know that every time you return into the same woodland, you're putting the effort in, you're putting time in, you're putting effort in to find compositions, and one day you will. Trust me on that one, one day you will, if you keep putting in the effort. And then on top of that, you'll come back in some beautiful conditions and you'll get that shot. So that's kind of the golden rule of this video, and I wanted to mention that at the start, so that's ingrained into your heads for any sort of beginner woodland photographers out there. Now, let's go around really this woodland, and I'm just going to search for compositions. Once I find something, I want to explain to you what my approach was in the first place, what caught my eye, and what sort of thing that I'm going for. Now, just briefly, before we set off, I'm shooting with this today. I've not even got my big Nikon D7200 camera with me. This is my trusty little Canon G9X. It used to be my video camera for this YouTube channel, but it's also a capable little stills camera. What this is going to allow me to do is this fits in my pocket. Anytime I see something, you know, that's a potential, I can get this out, take a quick snapshot. That's what today's all about, you know, scouting and composition. So I ain't got to worry about settings. I've no tripod. I haven't got to worry about focus or anything. It's purely just seeing if there's a potential in a certain composition, let's say. So, beautiful local woodland. I've been here about 6 or 7 times. Let's go and explore. So I'm going to take the first little snapshot here on this little scouting mission with the wonderful Canon G9X, and I've just stumbled across this nice subject here that I want to get into. So I was actually in this woodland here, and I'm en route to that woodland. So I'm currently in this really nice little clearing here, so we've got a lot less clutter. Now, one thing that I look for in terms of woodland composition this time of year especially is colour contrast, and that's exactly what I found here. So if you look on the very far left hand side of your screen around there, there should be 2 wonderfully vibrant yellow silver birch trees, and they are what caught my eye to start with. And like I said, it's all about colour contrast. There's nothing else in that scene that's so vibrant and yellow, so they stand out like a sore thumb, which is wonderful for us landscape photographers, or as woodland photographers in this case. So I'm going to take a snapshot with the G9X. I've got it on aperture priority mode, like I think I mentioned at the start. So I'm shooting at f4.9 just to get a quicker shutter speed. Whoa, the wind's picking up here. I think whenever I return to shoot this scene, you know, if I ever do, I'd like to bring my 55-300 lens and get a little bit closer in on the silver birch trees. But this snapshot should give you a little bit of an idea what I'm going for anyway. So what I'm thinking is a square crop, and actually just to centralise the two silver birch trees to give them prominence within the frame. I'd like to try and get back here, of course, when we've got a little bit of fog, and preferably as well a little bit of side light. So this next woodland photography compositional approach, let's say, is probably one of my favourites, and it's the one that I'd say I'm looking around for the most when I'm out in the forest taking photographs. And this is all about interaction. How are the trees interacting with each other? Now, before I get into my idea here, which is going to help me to explain, I'd like to give a little bit of credit to a fellow landscape photographer, a guy called Simon Baxter. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of. He's got his own wonderful YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it in the video description below. If you haven't, watched his channel and you're into your woodland photography, you'll absolutely love his work. But yeah, he talks a lot about this theory, let's say, of interaction. How are the trees interacting with each other? And I absolutely love it, and it's really changed my mindset when I come into the woodland with my camera. So my idea here is really going to be able to explain it quite well. I've got one tree on the left hand side of the frame and one tree on the right hand side, and they're both kind of almost leaning into each other, but mainly the branches are all kind of twisting towards each other, and it makes for two things: a really nice pleasing balance, like a left-right balance, but also quite a nice frame. And in this case, it's framing this kind of explosion or splash of autumnal colours that's kind of in between these two trees, and it's working really well. And for the composition here, at least, again, the conditions aren't great. I'd like to come back here when we've got more light, and again, when we've got a little bit of fog, or when it's damp, a little bit more atmospheric. Here it's just a little bit flat, but the composition's still there. And yeah, really, when you're in the woodland, look around. How are the trees interacting with each other? Are they leaning into each other? Are they leaning away from each other? It doesn't necessarily always have to be into each other. Is a certain tree leaning into a nice little bit of light, say, for example? I've got another scene actually that I'm going to show you in a second, which kind of touches on the interaction of trees a little bit, but in a different way. So again, just using the Canon G9X here, f4.5, just so I can get a bit of a quicker shutter speed. Again, it's just a little snapshot, but it'll give you a good idea of what it is that I'm kind of going for here. So I'm going to make this approach the last one of the video, and the only reason I want to do that is because I don't want to overwhelm you guys, really, especially any beginners out there. I think 3 is quite a good amount. 3 approaches that you can take after watching this video with you in your head when you next go to your local woodland. You can try and implement these things that I do every single time, and for the most part they really work for me. So, any of you guys that watch me regularly, you may notice this scene behind me. I was here about 2 weeks ago and actually took a photograph here with my D7200, my proper camera. And I mentioned a second ago when we were talking about interaction that this would kind of touch on that a little bit as well, and it does. If you look here, we've got this beautiful oak tree. It looks a lot better now as well there. You can see it's got the orange, beautiful orange sort of rusty brown coloured leaves. I think this scene actually is going to be worth retaking when autumn properly hits. This again has a nice interaction with what's going on the rest of the scene. However, the rest of the scene is over here, and you'll notice that it's like quite a while away. You'll notice a lot of the trees look smaller. And what this one's all about really is depth, and this one works pretty much in exactly the same way as anything with landscape photography. When you're shooting out on a mountain, when you're shooting on the coast, and basically what this is this tree is interacting with this side of the scene. However, it's interacting with the depth of the scene, so it's not necessarily got another tree, a symmetrical tree that's kind of leaning back into it. But it's so pleasing compositionally because the eye is drawn to the beauty of this oak tree, but because it's leaning in this way, you've got so much depth because it's taking the eye naturally into what's going on over here, which is like, you know, into the woodland. It's fantastic. So I'll put that image up for you to see now. Again, a lot of you guys will have seen this already. But hopefully after what I've just said there, you can see how that idea comes to life. And it means there's so much to look at within the scene. You know, I'd like to think your eye starts on the right hand side of the frame at the oak tree, but because of the way it's leading, and remember I've done this as the photographer with intent, I've deliberately taken the photograph like this so that the eye gets drawn within the woodland. It takes you within the woodland. It's like a journey. So again, it's the same as any other basic compositional techniques. Of course, it's difficult to find these sorts of things when you're out in the woodland, but hopefully this will give you a good idea of what to look for. Actually, my favourite thing about this whole composition was not the oak tree, but there's a tree. I'll put the image up again and I'll kind of circle it. So there's a tree right up in the distance. I just think it looks fantastic. And for me, that's kind of where the journey ends. You know, it goes from the oak tree to this kind of spooky, gloomy looking tree right off in the background. I absolutely love it. I quite like that photograph as is, but again, I think it might be bettered in maybe some early morning conditions. I've tried not to say fog then again. If you haven't gathered as well from this video to any beginners, if you can get to the woodland in foggy conditions, first thing in the morning, this time of year as well, like in autumn, it's fantastic. You know, everything changes, and I think you'll be able to implement these compositional approaches with a lot more ease, you know, when you're amongst foggy conditions, because it's really inspiring. So that's it. I really hope this has helped you. You know, woodland photography is tough, but again, like I said at the start of the video, if you take anything from this clip, let it be that you understand and you accept that woodland photography is difficult and you need to put the work in. That helps you to, or it helps you a little bit, you know, with those woodland photography frustrations, and just keep going at it. So thank you so much for tuning in. Much appreciated. As always, please give the video a like if you have a quick second, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Out.